We're interrupting our programming now to take you to Nasrec, where the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, is addressing the media.
To reflect on extensive and thorough and productive matters that we've been in discussion over here, and particularly our work as the National Executive Committee. Over the past few days, we have had discussions on a broad range of issues, both political, organizational, and social, that impact on the lives of our people. We've had occasion to look at what should constituting the political report that will be tabled at the 55th National Conference. We've also had occasion to look at what will form the framework, or what is the framework of the organizational report that will be tabled at the 55th National Conference, as indeed the financial report as well. We've also dealt with critical challenges of the moment, including the renewal of the African National Congress, and how we can continue improving governance in all spheres, and also addressing the economic and social needs of our people. This meeting has also had time to look at how we need to respond to the needs of our people, particularly as they are faced by rising living costs, which is causing a great hardship for millions of South Africans. Like many countries around the world, we are feeling the economic aftershocks of COVID-19, the extreme weather events as a result of climate change, with the rains now continuing to cause quite a lot of damage in certain parts of our country. And we're also feeling the effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. These are having a particular severe impact on the life circumstances of the 40% of South Africans who are living in poverty in our country. These families and communities are struggling to afford various costs, be they education, transport, food, and other basic needs. We, as the National Executive Committee, have noted the government's interventions to mitigate the impact of these developments. These interventions include the extension of the Social Relief of Disaster Grant until March of 2024, the temporary relief of fuel prices, the continuation of VAT zero rating of key food items, and the consolidation of our social security and protection system with social grants, which reach around 18 million South Africans. This meeting has reaffirmed that we will continue resolutely to implement our program to tackle the triple fault lines of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This means that we will intensify our work to transform our economy so that it can create more jobs through the implementation of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, including a greater focus on infrastructure projects. We are committed to maintain and, to the extent possible, to expand social security to protect the vulnerable and reduce poverty in our country. This must form part of our efforts to build a comprehensive social security system. The fight against poverty and the rising cost of living requires the provision of affordable quality basic services, including water, sanitation, electricity, and public transport. We also had time to reflect on the electricity challenges that our country is going through, and have urged our deployees in government to continue keeping this challenge that has befallen our people under greater focus to make sure that Eskom does indeed move towards getting rid of load shedding. We will continue to prioritize skills development and education through universal access to early childhood development, improving the quality of basic education and strengthening higher education and vocational training. We will also continue to move towards universal health coverage through implementing the national health insurance and focus on improving basic public health system as the backbone of a future unified health system. We will continue to also focus on land reform involving accelerated redistribution of land and increased support for agricultural production. In framing our response to the cost of living, we are guided by the key mission of the RDP, the Reconstruction and Development Program, which says that no political democracy can survive and flourish if the mass of our people remain in poverty, without land, without tangible prospects for a better life. Attacking poverty and deprivation must therefore be the first priority of a democratic government. We also took time to reflect on the issue of black economic empowerment. In giving effect to this priority, the NEC remains clear that the movement remains resolutely committed to the implementation of broad-based black economic empowerment. We have noted that whilst progress has been made in empowering black people and women in the economy, the benefits of this process have not been felt by all South Africans. This means that we need to intensify black economic empowerment measures rather than to relax them. We need to continue our work to refine and focus our efforts to ensure greater impact and faster realization of the constitutional and economic imperative of empowerment and redress, a matter that is clearly set out in our Constitution. The NEC has noted the new preferential procurement regulations published by the National Treasury last week in response to the Constitutional Court ruling on preferential procurement in the public sector. These regulations now comply with Section 217 of the Constitution in that they empower organs of state to develop and implement preferential procurement policies when contracting for goods and services. Contrary to some statements made in the public arena, these new regulations do not diminish our commitment to preferential procurement as a mechanism for economic transformation. The NEC has affirmed the ANC's position that broad-based black economic empowerment remains one of our key policy instruments. Through the NEC Economic Transformation Committee, we will monitor progress in the implementation of this policy and continue to engage with stakeholders, especially black business and black professionals. We also took time to discuss the Alliance Economic Summit. As the NEC, we have noted progress with regard to preparations, as further discussions will need to take place on this issue through the Secretariat of the Alliance, which will be held in a few days. We do believe that the summit will be critical to cement the common alliance positions on economic transformation and development and how to champion the interests of all South Africans, in particular the working class and unemployed. We also took a presentation on the Electoral Amendment Bill. We have had an opportunity to discuss this bill, which has been passed by the National Assembly. We have noted that the main objective of the bill is to make provision for independent candidates to contest elections for the National Assembly and provincial legislatures. The debate about the most appropriate electoral system for our country is an important part of our maturing democracy. It was also a matter that was raised in the State Capture Commission. The ANC has consistently supported a proportional representation system as the most appropriate system for our country, as a country that is as diverse as ours in terms of race, class, gender, political opinion, and regional landscapes that we have. Proportional representation ensures that every political view shared by more than 1/4 of 1% of the population is able to find representation in Parliament. The ANC also supports the view that any electoral system reforms must strengthen the accountability of public representatives to the people. We have said that these must be discussed widely in our society. We have noted the objections from some sections of civil society to the current version of the bill and have said that we should continue to engage on these matters. We also received a report from a committee we set up regarding the State Capture Commission recommendations. The task team that's led by Comrade Jeff Khadebe gave us a report on this. The meeting welcomed the work done by the subcommittees of the NEC on the various findings and recommendations of the Commission. The NEC endorsed the government's response to the Commission as submitted to Parliament on the 22nd of October as a comprehensive plan to ensure that state capture never happens again. We also took time to discuss the issue of local government coalitions. We had a very useful discussion on coalitions that are taking place at local level. Our previous and more recent experience of coalitions showed that they tend to contribute to instability in councils. The NEC reaffirmed its principled approach towards coalition government. This is based on the need to advance the achievement of our manifesto commitments, particularly to build local democracy and service delivery, but also to improve accountability to the citizens of our local governments. The NEC welcomed the report on preparations for the 55th National Conference, which, as we all know, will be held from the 16th to the 20th of December. We want to thank the tens of thousands of ANC members who gathered in their branch general meetings to elect delegates to National Conference and to nominate people for election to the NEC. Some branches also took time to discuss the substantive issues that will also be discussed at our conference. In the coming weeks, a number of our branches will continue discussions on all these substantive issues before the National Conference takes place, including organizational renewal, constitutional amendments that were also presented here, and the ANC strategy and tactics and the program of transformation. As we have observed, this national conference will be a moment of great significance for the African National Congress and our country. It will demonstrate the ANC's internal democratic processes at work and affirm the commitment of ANC members to renewal, to unity, and to rebuilding our organization. We also welcome the update report on the work of the Renewal Commission on the proposed vision and program of the ANC for the next 10 years. The proposed vision for 2032 allows us to look beyond the issues of the present position of our movement for the South Africa and the world that we want in the future. On international matters, as this NEC, we extend our congratulations to the people of Angola and the MPLA on the celebration of the centenary of the late President Antonio Agostinho Neto. As one of the founders of the MPLA, he was an internationalist who supported the struggles of oppressed people across the continent, and in particular, the struggle against apartheid in Namibia and South Africa. The NEC welcomed the agreement reached between the government of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front as a first step towards resolving the devastating conflict which started in November 2020. We will continue to support efforts to ensure that the talks pave the way towards a lasting solution to achieve peace, stability, and development in Ethiopia. We pay tribute to President Obasanjo and President Kenyatta, as well as our own former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka for helping to facilitate these talks here in South Africa. We have noted the critical issues before COP27 that's taking place in Egypt, where our delegates and Minister Barbara Creasy are at present engaged in talks there. We have reaffirmed ANC policies and those of government that developed economy countries must honor their commitments to reduce emissions and to pay for mitigation, adaptation in developing economy countries. It further confirmed our commitment to an energy mix that takes into consideration our natural endowments, as well as the developmental needs of the country in the context of a just transition that should leave no one behind as we transit towards green energy, and that workers and communities that are affected by this transition are not left behind, as we also develop new sectors of our economy, as in the green hydrogen economy, the electric vehicles, as well as greater generation of our electricity from mixed sources. As this NEC, as we are a month away from the 55th conference, we will need to report to delegates on the implementation of the mandate that we were given 5 years ago at the 54th National Conference. This report will be greatly enriched by the discussions that we have had here, and our report will reflect that while this NEC has had to confront serious challenges, we can point to several achievements and progress in a number of areas. At the same time, we will need to acknowledge our shortcomings and our failings as the National Executive Committee, as we also point out some of the areas where we've been able to make progress. We must ensure that our political and organizational reports are frank, critical and comprehensive so that we can empower delegates to develop a program that takes our movement into a new phase of renewal and rebuilding. As this NEC, we are now at the final close of our term. Our task now is to ensure that we have a successful 55th National Conference that takes forward the National Democratic Revolution and rebuilds the ANC as an effective agent of fundamental social transformation. I want to end by thanking all NEC members who were able to execute their tasks either as deployees, NEC deployees in our provinces, or as members of our various NEC subcommittees. We were able, during these 5 years, to show a great deal of commitment in our work and to the people of our country. Lastly, I'd like to thank our comrades in the SGO who've been working very hard to make sure that we prepare for this conference, including in the TGO. And I'd also like to thank our comrades in the provinces who've been making sure that our BGMs take place, our provincial leaders, and indeed our regional leaders as well, and branch leaders, and indeed also thank our branch members for keeping the ANC alive and making sure that we do advance to the 55th conference as we are doing so. So thank you very much and good night.
That's President Cyril Ramaphosa there in his capacity as ANC President, giving the closing remarks of the party's NEC meeting, which took place at Nasrec this past weekend, and talking about how they, they've resolved that they'll continue with their efforts to end what they call the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and equality. And of course, talking about the fact that these are programs that they'll continue to look into. They'll expand social security to ensure that they secure those who are most vulnerable, talking about the implementation of the NHI and saying that they'll be focusing on land reform, also touching on the contentious issue of triple BE. You know that there were new regulations that we announced by Treasury, and of course these have been welcomed by some, but others have simply not welcomed it, and they say that they will then be engaging the business community on this particular one. And the president saying that these particular regulations adhere to section 217 of the Constitution, but they do understand that, of course, there are some who have expressed concern around the issues of economic redress. And he says that they are going to then be meeting with the business community on this one and talking about the Alliance Summit, looking at the various committees that had to report back this weekend as well. And critically, of course, the work of the Renewal Committee, which he says that they did get a report back on that. And of course, ending off by thanking the NEC members. Has also touched on the issues of COP27 as well, and some of the plans that South Africa has put in place. And of course, remember, South Africa also submitting that plan to their gathering there. But also remember, this is a big weekend for the NEC, as various reports have been suggesting in various media houses, and also looking here at what we are running as SABC as well, talking about the fact that the president, for the first time, took the NEC into his confidence about the Phala Phala farm saga. Now, you'd remember this, of course, since June, a number of people have been saying that he should have at least have taken the NEC into his confidence. And these, of course, are some of the reports that have emerged from this weekend, talking about that organizational report that would have then been critical. And as the president ends off here by thanking the regional leaders, the provincial leaders, and some of the NEC members, the focus then shifts to some of the branch general meetings that would have then been held. But you look at some of the other provinces, Free State, for example, still limping there. So what does it all mean then for the ANC that is going to conference on the 16th to the 20th of December? Let's speak to Omry Makgoale, who's an ANC veteran and political analyst. Mr. Makgoale, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. The president, of course, addressing the gathering and wrapping up, giving his closing remarks just after the NEC. I wonder, did he hit the nail on the head, or do you feel that his address was lacking something?
I think under the conditions he did well. Under the conditions he did well. The conditions are not very ideal in all respect, but I think he did well under the conditions. ANC is in a very sick state at the moment. It's not in a good state. And of course, COVID-19 didn't help because most of the meetings, open meetings, could not be held. So under the conditions, maybe it's fair. It's not ideal, but it's fair, yes.
It's not ideal, but it's fair. But is, as you say, that this is an ANC that really needs, as you say, quite a dramatic push, because you think about the structures, they appear to be weakened. And I'm talking about the Women's League, I'm talking about the Youth League, TOS team. All these structures now have TOS teams. You look at provinces, some of the provinces themselves are not even speaking in one voice. Should he have just simply thanked them at the end, or possibly had some kind of words for some of these structures?
Yes, I think maybe what happened is that you rightfully said with the TOS team. All the TOS teams are a reflection that the structures that were supposed to be elected were not elected. So it means that the conferences that were supposed to be held in the respective areas were not held, whether it's the Free State, whether it's the Youth League, whether it's the Western Cape. There are no structures there. So the TOS team basically are a reflection that the ANC has not performed as expected in those areas because there are no structures that should have been elected formally. And it's a reflection, of course, of the current NEC, the president as a person in charge, and his NEC team. They have not done well in that regard because they should be having structures. But of course, there's an excuse of blaming COVID-19 for most of the things, and maybe it should be acceptable as an excuse to a certain extent. But they didn't do well. The fact that we have TOS teams and not provincial structures, not youth league structures, they didn't do well. They didn't perform well as.
I'm sure you've seen some of the reports coming out of this weekend as the NEC was having its meeting, and you juxtapose that with some of the interviews that would have been in the public domain by various NEC members when it comes to the issue of Phala Phala. And today we wake up to some reports suggesting that the president did take the NEC into his confidence as to what exactly happened in this particular matter. Is he too late?
I think, you can never know whether it's too late or early because, you see, with factions and slate battles inside the ANC, probably he thought maybe he must not talk about this earlier on and so on. So, because of the factions and battles inside the ANC. So, basically, it's not a normal ANC. Under normal ethical ANC, he should have told them earlier if he trusted the NEC, that all the NEC have got the interest of the ANC at heart, and maybe he didn't think that they will attack him personally on the slate and faction basis. Now, because of the factions and slate inside the ANC, and this is why maybe he had to take more precautions in terms of when he actually come clean in front of the NEC. But I think it's because of the problems inside, yes.
Are those enough precautions, though, when you look ahead to December?
Yes, well, December is around the corner, as you see, and of course those precautions maybe are no longer going to help much because everything comes to a head in December during the conference. But with this story of Phala Phala, it will depend really on what the judges say on the story, because there's criminal issues and there's moral issues. In terms of the moral issues, in terms of ANC moral issues, the Phala Phala story is a mess for us as ANC. But criminally, in terms of the law and so on, that's up to the lawyers and so on. We don't really know much. What is this a crime, or was there a crime committed or not committed? We don't really know much. But in terms of the moral, the integrity of the ANC, Phala Phala has not been a good story for us.
So
it has really taken us down,
So then, Mr. Makgoale, if I'm listening then to what you're saying, you talk about the issues of morality and, the highest ethics. Then if inside the ANC it's a moral mess, and you look at then the rules that have now been set out ahead of December as to who then qualifies to be in the NEC. When you borrow from that, they talk about the expectation for these individuals to have the highest ethical and moral standards. How then do you place him against the backdrop of these very rules and what you're saying?
Look, I think the ANC is in the wet stage. Most of the NEC members are actually compromised, most of them. Very few would, match the integrity of O.R. Tambo or Chief Albert Lituli in that NEC, Very few. Most of them are compromised. So, and now with him compromised by this Phala Phala story, so it's not really, he's not an exception in that NEC. If we were to go through the stories of various members of that NEC, most of them have got scandals and so on and so on. So it is an unfortunate type of NEC at the moment. It cannot match the requirements of Chief Albert Lituli or O.R. Tambo as it is at the moment. But under the conditions, maybe he is the best person at the moment to lead the ANC. Maybe he's the best person under these conditions, which are very, of course, very shameful conditions for us as ANC at the moment. So, I'm sorry to say so.
I hear you, and of course you are a member of this political party. Is this then the NEC that you as the members want to lead you in light of what you've just said about it?
Yes, well, as I say, it's according to our electoral systems inside the ANC. They were elected and they should be in the office until they can be removed formally in the elections. And at the moment, they are elected as members of the NEC, and we work according to the constitution of the NEC. Until otherwise, they will remain in office. It is up to us as members to see how we cleanse the NEC as we go forward. But we hope that in future, of course, we will elect our leaders in a different way on the basis of one person, one vote, one member, one vote, with equal value in the ANC. We will no longer use this branch delegate conference format, because this branch delegate conference format has been bad for the ANC in the last 30 years. So we need to change it and introduce one ANC member, one vote.
While you talk about that, then, that particular process, let's talk about the quality of the delegates that is going to the ANC conference in December. Is this a delegate that is in touch with the issues grappling South Africans right now, or is this a delegate that is more concerned about the step aside resolution and any other matter that is internally and is not looking outwardly towards South Africa?
Look, most of the delegates are not really ideal, because they're still elected along this, branch delegate system, which is not perfect at the moment. It's fraud with bribery and so on, money and all that. So it's not really ideal. But under the conditions, as I say, they are elected, and we should follow the constitution of the current constitution of the ANC, because they are elected. They must be allowed to go to the conference to go and deliberate. The important thing, of course, that they must acknowledge as ANC delegate is that the country is not interested much, on the ANC. They are interested in the economy Can they repair the economy? Can the rail infrastructure be restored? You know, can the jobs come back? Can the energy crisis of Eskom be addressed? You know, the community, the society, the people of South Africa are more interested in that than what happens inside the ANC, because they want jobs. When they go to work, you know, and bread on the table for their children. So that's what the people of South Africa are interested in. So the delegate must be aware of that. I hope they will be aware of that.
All right, Dr. Makgoale, thank you so much for your time. Do appreciate it. That is Omry Makgoale, ANC veteran and political analyst. Let's stay